to take a look at the human side of the river. Alex has done an awesome job of kind of setting up how it got here, what it's done, but what I want to do is kind of show you how it's interacted with our region for going on, not in geologic time, but human time, probably thousands of years. And that's what we're going to try to talk about today. And hopefully we'll tell you a few things that you didn't know, and I'm going to show you some pictures that we've never shared before that we've rounded up over the years. This one I'm going to come back to a little later, you can see better, but let me just quickly tell you that is Colonial, North Carolina in 1908. Okay, is where that is at. Very different looking than today, isn't it? Very, very different looking. So, anyhow, let's continue on. I want to start about the river itself. These pictures that you see like this were made in the early 1900s by the railroad. And they produced a series of books trying to get people to tour the area. Okay, and I meant to bring one of them today with me. My daughter found one down at Bob's Antique Shop from 1912. That's amazing what they printed to try to convince people to visit the region. This is a picture of the toe. Again, this is down near the Tennessee line that you can see. But I wanted to share with you a little clip out of the Charlotte Observer. And I'm going to read this if you'll bear with me. It's called Along the River. And this was written about 1905, 1906, somewhere in there. And it says, the journey to Johnson City began in perfect weather, and after Vance Tunnel had been passed, the Toe River appeared. It was to be our companion for fully 50 miles, and a very agreeable companion too. Though this stream is always muddy. Sound familiar, Alex? Now, this is way before commercial mining. Okay, but it's always been a source of sedimentation. It's been in the river, but very, very muddy, as it says here. Thanks to mica in the soil, the river gave us a surprise. We were running down it when suddenly, at a curve, it disappeared. Then it popped right out again, and lo and behold, it was running exactly the other way. Now, who knows where that's at? Let me stop right there. Let's see if you know. It's down on the Alba Pass.
Carpenter Island?
It's Carpenter Island. If you've ever been to Carpenter Island's Alba Pass, the river basically folds around on itself down there.
And David, that Vance Tunnel is Deb's family.
Yep. Yep. So, if you want to see what we're talking about, it literally is about 1.5 miles right down here. Okay? As we said though, going the other way. It has made a loop. It's gone 4 miles and came back in 1/4 mile on itself, and we had simply crossed that loop. I never saw anything quite so curious about a stream as this. The trip all the way to Johnson City was made on the rear platform where folding chairs were specially provided so that the observer could best observe. 4 miles from Alba Pass is Spruce Pine, 12 miles from Marion Rail, 22 by Rural Free Delivery Route. The road was completed from Johnson City to Spruce Pine in 1902. Okay? That's an early description of the toe. And it has always been a highway for this region for hundreds of years, actually thousands of years. And it's doing a new job today, which we'll get to at the end of the presentation. So let's talk about the early history of the river. By the way, this is technically not the toe. This is the Nolechucky that you're looking at here, the Nolechucky Gorge, going over into Tennessee. And this is the home of Class 4 rapids, one of the few sets of them in the eastern United States. And they do an awful lot of canoeing and whitewater rafting down in here. Okay? But early history, let's go all the way back to the Native Americans. What did they use the toe for?
Fishing.
And by the way, I'm going to do like Alex. Let's talk. Okay, this isn't just me doing things. Fishing, transportation. This was one of the major routes that they used to get through the Appalachians. Why is that?
Climbing.
Easier walking.
Easier way to get around. Alex was telling me that earlier. It's, you know, like the view. These rivers cut the Appalachian Mountains and made the ability for them to move across them a little bit easier. So the Indians, they mined here, but actually they didn't do a whole lot in the way of settlements. There were a few, but this was a major area for hunting. And they also did a lot of mica mining here, and the sinkhole mine out at Loafers Glory is a good example of that. And they took that mica and it traveled all the way to Ohio. It's been found in the Midwest that the Indians shared. Okay, these Native Americans, though, Thousands and thousands of years they were here. Does anybody know who the first European was that came here? It was a Spaniard. This fellow right here. Fernando de Soto.
Yes.
In 1540. Now, where did De Soto go?
Down the river.
He walked on Lower Street in Spruce Pine 500 years before Spruce Pine was here. 400 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yes, they came to Juara, which is an area in Burke County. If you've never been there, I really encourage you to go visit it because they have actually found the Spanish fort where they came. And De Soto came to this community in 1540 and met with them, and they brought him up into the mountains, and they followed the North Toe River from roughly Plum Tree all the way down through where we're at right now and over into Tennessee. And they got over there, and De Soto turned back and came back and went another way. And of course, he ended up dying out at the Mississippi River a little bit later. But he was the first European to ever, quote unquote, that we know of, set foot on the Toe River.
At the hands of his own men.
At the hands of his own men when he died, yes, he sure did. But just think about that. He visited Spruce Pine in 1540. That's just amazing to me to think about. And it's a lost part of our history. They don't talk a lot about it. Obviously, the folks at Juara is trying to do something about that. But it's kind of interesting that he was the first. Now, there was another group with him by a commander of Juan Pardo. They came about 25 years later. They did some mining. There are rumors, and Alex, you probably heard them too, about the horse stomp mine up at Little Switzerland being one of the locations that the Spanish may have visited. We have no proof of that.
And I've been in and studied the horse stomp, and there's nothing of value in that mine.
Yeah, so, you know, we don't know anything, but that is rumors that's been shared. But as I said, that's the first European. And of course, as we mentioned, over the next 20 years or so, they were up in here. The only thing they were really looking for, though, was what? Gold. Yeah, they weren't really interested in settling the region. They weren't really interested in interacting with the Indians. And as we tell the story down at Juara, in 1567, 1568, they were violently expelled. All of them killed but one man. And he was sent back to tell them, you're not welcome here. And that's how it ended. And of course, the English came along about 20 years later and started settling North America.
Well, wasn't De Soto a young lieutenant with Coronado or one of the guys out west?
Yeah, he was. I mean, the Spaniards were all over Mexico, the western United States, or what is now the western United States. But this was the first first time they visited the eastern area.
And that was hard artifacts that we have still in existence that show that where they were in this area?
Yeah, they found several at Juara. In fact, my daughter, who we've been talking about, she is interested in archaeology. In fact, I think she's going to go to school for it. She's dug at Juara for the last 3 summers, and last summer she found an aglet, which is a piece off of their shirts, and actually held it in her hand. And that was really cool, because, you know, holding something that was a Spanish artifact 400 years old was kind of impressive. But yes, they found a lot of evidence. Now, with that said, it would be really interesting to me. We know they camped all up and down the toe, but nobody's ever found, you know, some of the spots they stopped. But there's probably some stuff out there somewhere. Maybe someday somebody will run into it. We'll see. Now, next step, when we step forward really in this region, would be the colonial era, and that would be when the English arrived. Early settler here, his name was Samuel Bright. He lived down along what's called, well, I'll call Davenport Springs. Do you all know where the airport is in Avery County? Okay, that actually used to be Mitchell County, and that was Mitchell County's seat in 1861. There was a community there by the name of Childsville that later was known as Calhoun, North Carolina. And that was supposed to be the county seat. And it was along the Toe River. But as I mentioned, Samuel Bright, one of the early settlers, he broke the King's Declaration, the Proclamation of 1763, and settled in the valley. And of course, later on, you had the Over Mountain men who came through, and they followed the North Toe basically from Roaring Creek down through where we're at now, and crossed and went over to basically the golf course, and that's where they camped. And then they split into two groups. One group went down roughly where the Bigman Lodge is. There used to be a road there. And then the other group went down through another part of the valley, up a little bit farther north, Peppers Creek up in there, and then they convalesced together at Quaker Meadows and went on and fought Patrick Ferguson at Kings Mountain. But they followed the Toe River. One of the reasons they did that, of course, water, fishing. I mean, you know, there were reasons that they followed it. They made reference of it a lot in their writings for the period. So just want to note that the Toe was a part of the Over Mountain March too, all along. Now with that said, let's talk about this fellow for a minute. We're going to come back to him a little bit later. Daniel Boone, one of the first explorers in our area. There's all sorts of rumors about Daniel. We'll hit one a little bit later about a community here in Mitchell County. But he supposedly set a horse loose on top of Roan Mountain, and it's one of the ways they claim the Roan got its name was from his roan-colored horse. Now, again, no proof of any of this. That's just a legend. But we do know Daniel visited the Toe River Valley, and he hunted here. You know, he didn't obviously settle here or anything, but he made several trips into our area. So he's one of the early visitors to our area also. And of course, he goes on later and does the Cumberland Road and you know, kind of opens the west up and everything. But it's kind of neat to know that Mitchell County and Yancey County has a little bit of that role. In fact, some of his relatives are in Yancey County to this day and are settled over there. So I thought we'd throw that in there for this for a little bit. I already talked about the Over Mountain, so let's move on. Now, with that said, what are they dealing with in the Toe Valley? Basically, rugged, fairly inaccessible. This again, a picture. This is 1908. You can see a little piece of the river right here. Down again, a lot of these photos were made down against the Tennessee-North Carolina line of the railroad. But this is a little bit more clear than you would have seen, but it was a very, very rugged region. Very, very hard to get around in. And here's another good picture of the Toe, wandering around the turn of the 19th, around the turn of the 20th century rather. Now, notice one of the things that's interesting to me at this time, though. Look at all the clearing on top of the hills, where it was clear cut by people. You know, and obviously they were raising food, they were raising livestock, but it's just dotted here, there, and yonder. You don't see that today, not like you did back then. In fact, we've got pictures of downtown Spruce Pine. It's amazing. This whole hill behind us here was totally clear cut at one time, above town. So, as I said, very, very hard to get in and do things. The Toe River was one of those few routes, though, that gave people access. Now, you couldn't go up and down in terms of a boat too well, but it did, like you mentioned earlier, carve easier paths, and a lot of the Indian paths were used, you know, to follow along and get over into Tennessee. It didn't do a lot for us getting off the mountain as much as it did getting into Tennessee. And that's one of the reasons why this area probably has greater ties west than it did east, because it was easier for them to move westward. And then also southward into South Carolina. It's much easier to do that during this period. So with that said, here's again that picture we showed you of Toe Canyon in 1908. Now, they claim this was taken from the top of Pumpkin Patch Mountain. Now, where I know Pumpkin Patch Mountain is at today is not the same mountain, okay? But again, you can see the makings of something which we're going to come back to here in a moment, and that's the railroad right here. Okay, and that's what I want to kind of get into next here a little bit. There again, more of the Nolichucky Gorge. Look at just how rugged it was, how difficult it would have been to move around. There's another good picture of it. That's right at the Tennessee line right there where that picture is made. Now we move into here though, and we want to kind of get into the Civil War. We're going to come back to the railroad here in a minute. But I want to tell you a little story about a place up in Avery County called Yankee Rocks. Anybody ever heard of this?
Been to it.
Been to it. Alex has been to it. You know where it's at? You want to tell them?
You go up Goochie's Creek Road.
Right.
Some people call it Hanging Rock Road. You go around to the old Crowder Farm. And then back in there to, what's the name of the big rock before you get to that one? The swimming hole.
Yeah, I know. I can't remember the name of it.
And Phillips family just bought that.
So, what is the Yankee Rocks? Okay, well, first off, let's talk about Isaac English. Everybody knows the English Inn here in Spruce Pine. Well, before he had the English Inn in the late 1800s, he owned land basically from Buck Hill in Avery County down to where this is located, which we call it the Bend, is the name that they call it around here. Down near where Beans used to be, okay? He owned all of that land. And he was a Union sympathizer. And he had a couple of guys that had escaped Confederate prison. One of them's name was James Gear. Okay, and they managed to get up here and we hid them under this rock. And they stayed there for a couple of weeks until they could get them to a Union line up in Linville Falls and get them back to a unit that they could, you know, work with. But they call it Yankee Rocks because this is where they hid them at. And there have been reports that there were military buttons and things found under here. I don't know if anybody that has any of that, but the point is it's along the Toe River.
And what kind of rock is that, Dave?
I don't know.
That's metamorphic.
Perfect sweet.
Now, there's something else about this rock that's kind of interesting. Do you know the other legend about it? It's a Cherokee legend. Have you ever heard the legend of Estetoe?
Yeah.
Okay, what was the legend of Estetoe?
Some Native American girl fell in love with a guy.
From the Catawba Indians, yes.
And they ran away or something to escape her father, who was very irritated with her, and jumped.
Yep.
Sort of like, and,
The legend has it this is where Estetoe jumped from.
yes.
The same rock. Okay, did you know that? All right, that is the legend. Again,
This was a Catawba Indian maiden that...
no, well, let's see, I think she was Catawba and he was Cherokee, yeah, I believe so.
And her dad didn't approve and they had to run away or something.
Yeah, and then she jumped into the river. And
In
drowned.
fact, a lot of, Starley's dad owns this property.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is the legend of Yankee Rocks. It is there, and as we said, it has a tie to the Cherokee Indians also, and it's right along the Toe River. Okay, so let me share that with you. Now, here's where things change. As I mentioned before, the Toe has become, at the time, a way to get into the region, you know, Indian trails, things of that nature. But in the early 1900s, the railroad is leaving Tennessee and is seeking a way to get to Charleston, South Carolina. And we had a program on this back in July over at the Bakersfield Courthouse. A fellow by the name of George Carter managed to get the money and get the road through and down the mountain out here at the loops at Alpass and then on to South Carolina. And he was a very, very rich man. Okay, this is a survey crew working at Penland, North Carolina in about 1900. They're laying out where the railroad is going to go. One of the first pictures we've ever ran into of this. But they're actually, and I don't know exactly where Penland this is at, but the point is, they were setting the route. And what would have been the easiest way for them to get into the region?
Follow the river.
Follow the river, exactly. And what does the Clinchfield do basically from the time it leaves Irwin until it gets to Spruce Pine? It follows the river. And then it leaves out here at Alpass and starts down the mountain. Okay? They had to get down the mountain somewhere, and they elected that the best place would have been out here at Alpass. They brought in a couple of fellas who were engineering experts that over-designed that tunnel for the time. They are still using the grades he created in 1900 for today's trains. That's how well he built that railroad to get down the mountain. Totally amazing. But the point is, the railroad comes. This is actually down in Alpass. This is one of the bridges down in Carpenter Island in 1907. In fact, that's the first passenger train from Spruce Pine to Marion that you're looking at right there, heading down the mountain. But you'll notice it's crossing the Toe River, but the point is it had to follow the river to get in here. And for the next, well, up into today, the railroad has been a major artery of transportation in this region. From the early times when it got here around 1900 up to 1952, it moved passengers. In fact, you could get on the train twice a day in Spruce Pine and go anywhere in the United States. Think about this, folks, when that left. I mean, what left with it when the airlines came into being and rail travel disappeared. That's why you had an S.T. Henry who moved here to run a farm, but stayed active in a book business that he worked with in New York because he could get anywhere. He could just go hop on the train in Spruce Pine and go. Couldn't do that after 1952. Here's another picture of the train. This was down near Tokyo. Again, notice right along the river. And that haunts the railroad, of course, over the years because what happens? Floods. Wipes it out. We're going to look at some of that a little bit later. But the point is, that river, the way it was laid out is why that railroad came through here. As Alex mentioned, very, very few routes across the Appalachian Mountains. And that's why the tow was chosen for that. Here's another bridge. This is down at Holla Poplar, basically Poplar, North Carolina. That bridge is still there. It was built in 1900. And it is still there and active. Again, I love these pictures. They're just beautiful pictures.
Is that actually at Huntdale?
No, we ain't got to Huntdale. This is in Poplar. This is actually at Poplar, a little bit farther down. That's where this was at. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start and walk back through 4 communities. And we're going to start with the last, I'll call it vestige of isolationism in the region, and that's the Lost Cove. How many of you have ever been to the Lost Cove?
My son.
Arch has back there, there's one.
We want to.
Well, we're going to give you a quick tour. How's that? But let's talk about what this is. Now, first off, you see here on the map, on the Google map, and notice where it's at. Here's the Tennessee line. Here comes the river. Here's the cove. Do you see a road anywhere here? No. None whatsoever. And when they settled this cove, which would have been in the 1800s, they basically built a community there. It had a church, it had a school, it had several families, and it was there until 1959. And the only access was the railroad. Okay? Let's look at that. Here's the railroad coming in. This is the Nolechucky Gorge. Now notice how narrow it is. The rail came twice a day. And they had a little road that went down to it. And yes, they had cars and everything. You'll see here in a moment there. Again, we're looking up and down the river here at the Lost Cove. But then they had a settlement, and these houses are still in there. Okay, they were just abandoned. In fact, the schoolmaster wrote on the board last day of school, and he put a date in 1959, and you know how sad he was that the community was gone. But here, we'll just look around a little bit, you know, some of the houses. These folks actually lived here, no connection except the railroad. But when they announced that the railroad was going away, they actually did a lot of logging. So they would park a rail car, they would load logs on it, and that's how they made their money. And when that all ceased, they all left and left it in place. And you can hike back in there now, and these are some of the things that you see.
Well, David, I remember seeing like that remnants of that old truck and car. What value were vehicles if there was no road?
Well, they go around the community. I mean, you know, the little community, they had some roads in there where they could haul logs and stuff. Yeah, I mean, you know, it wasn't like a Bible, whatever, there were just a few of them in there. This is the church and school. And then, of course, you still have some of the foundations standing. But the point is, this is one of the last vestiges of how it was, I guess you could say, the isolation that this region saw. And the railroad was their lifeblood. And when it ceased to provide the passenger trains and everything, then of course the river couldn't help, and they moved on. There's one of the last pictures of it, looking just down the river. So let's talk about Huntdale for a little bit. Huntdale, North Carolina. First off, how did Huntdale get its name?
Hunt camp?
Nope. There was a fella, a Peterson, and this, by the way, is Peterson's store to this day, who had a wife, and her name was David. and she had a little propensity to run off on him. So he would have to go and hunt Dale, and that's how the town got its name. Now, the reason that I bring Huntdale up, this was a thriving, vibrant community in Mitchell County around 1900, 1901. It had a hotel, it had a whole series of warehouses, it had restaurants, it had all sorts of stuff because it was the end of the line at the time for the Colonial Railroad. So they would bring stuff to there, and they had places they would, set things out, and it was doing a booming business. But of course, the railroad was trying to get on down the mountain, and when it moved past Huntdale, that all left. And now this is what we have left of Huntdale. That's looking at the river. Literally right here. And of course, the railroad is over behind right where I'm at here. I'll just flip back to a couple of these. So the railroad's up behind the Peterson store. Okay? But again, that's Huntdale, North Carolina, and that was a thriving community because of the railroad and because of its location on the Toe River. There's the Huntdale Depot. That actually was standing in the 1950s. I did not know that. I found that picture online. It's the only reason that I popped it in here. I don't have a copy of it. It's not a real good copy, but I did want to show because we didn't know that was there. I wanted to find a copy of that. Now we want to talk about Relief, North Carolina next. Who knows how Relief got its name? By the way, this building is still standing. That is the general store, and it's right across from the Toe River. But why did it get called Relief? Has to do, well, the railroad was involved, but they sold a tonic called Heart's Relief that was basically whiskey. But it was a tonic, and a lot of people would buy that to cure their rheumatism and whatever else. And of course, they did have moonshining and stuff going on, but that's how Relief got its name. It's from that because this store moved a ton of Heart's Relief. And that's how it got its name. J.M. Webb of Webb Funeral Home fame, this is where he got his start. And the first Webb Funeral Home was right there.
Did he participate in the relief?
Oh, I'm sure he probably did. But again, it was built right along the river in the little community, of course, sprung up right there. And, was there really up, this store actually, I think, functioned until the early 1960s before it closed. But it is still standing down there, so if you get to go down there, now you know the story. And they do have painted over here in the windows, you'll see U.S. Post Office, mentioned that it used to be a post office down there at one time. These were all over Mitchell County at one time, the general store. This is obviously a bygone era. But they would often spring up, and a lot of them popped up right along the toe because the railroad was there and they could easily get supplies to and from them. Now, the other thing that happens over the toe is this. And this, of course, Relief is up here on the hill just above us. This was made in 2004 at the height of Hurricane Ivan. Okay, so do y'all remember Ivan and Francis? Okay. I just wanted to take a picture and just show you the toe could get a little bit mean at times. And of course, in the middle of regular weather, that's a nice road that takes you into Tennessee, but here it's under several feet of water. I just wanted to throw that out because it is it's a give and take sort of thing. It's a lifeblood of the region, it's a transportation artery for the region, but it also can destroy a lot of things, and it has done that over the years. One of which we're going to take a look at here a little bit closer in a moment. Let's talk about Boonford, which is really the reason this all got started. Boonford, North Carolina. Now, Doug, can you bear with me to read a little of this? So Doug asked us to look into this, and Jonathan Bennett, my co-author for the Mount Mitchell book, which I quickly need to mention, they're having the Over Mountain Men reenactment out at the edge of the mountain. Jonathan's doing that. If you get a chance, go out there tonight, because it was really cool what they did. They showed that off. But Jonathan sent me all sorts of stuff about Boonford that I didn't know. I wanted to just share some of that with you. First off, let's talk about how did it get its name?
That's where Daniel crossed the river.
Supposedly Daniel Boone crossed the river there, although there is a Thomas Boone that lived near there, and they were, saying that he had the name. Now, Boonford itself has the notoriety of being a community that, I'll say, switched sides. It was on Yancey County for a while, and then it moved to Mitchell County, and that's where it is today. It's actually in Mitchell County, but it started in Yancey County. So, it's 2,421 feet above sea level. A couple other things about it. Another legend is that Daniel carved his name on a tree after he forded the river there, and it was visible well into the 1800s. Now, we were able to verify that, but that was the legend, of course. Now, let's talk a little bit about Boonford itself. And if you'll look down, over here's the landfill. This is the brand new bridge for Highway 80. Everybody been on that? That's basically over the top of where Boonford was at. And Doug has mentioned he's been down there and taking pictures. There's still a few structures down in there, and I'm going to tell you about some of the stuff that used to be at Boonford. Because it, like Huntdale, was the end of the line at one time. And what did that mean? Economic boom. Okay? So, when the community was founded, the post office was originally in Yancey County, November 17th, 1902. First postmaster of Boonford's name was Mac Daniel Hunter. He apparently owned a store, which, there is the store. And I apologize, Doug, I found that Friday night.
How's look?
I did not know I had that.
You get no complaint from me.
Yeah, so that is the Boonford store. Okay, they're posted out in front of it, and it was owned by this Mac Daniel Hunter. Most certainly had the post office in it. Now, it was moved to Mitchell County in 1921 when Charles Howell built a store on the other side of the river, which is where the railroad was. Sound familiar? Okay, so he put a store over there. They named him postmaster, and they moved Boonford to Mitchell County in 1921. Okay, some other things here that's kind of interesting. His store was burned with all of its records in it at one time. Arson was suspected in this fire. On November 8, 1928, the postmaster Till Robinson at Boonford was shot to death by a fellow by the name of Will Glenn from Spruce Pine. There was a hotel at Boonford too. I neglected to mention that. And we found several mentions of the hotel in ads in the newspaper, which was really kind of cool. Talked about you could see Mount Mitchell. Everybody was all about Mount Mitchell. From the Boonford Hotel. It didn't give a whole lot of other details, but so there was a boarding house at Boonford at one time. And the railroad itself came through, and it was known as the Ohio River and Charleston Railroad, the ORNC. It arrived in Boonford. Well, let me back up here. ORNC was originally known as the Charleston, Cincinnati, and Chicago, the Triple C Railroad. It was sold in July 1893, and trains began arriving in Boonford on January 26, 1903. Okay, so the end of the line in Boonford was in 1903. That was about a year before the tracks arrived down here on Lower Street. And Spruce Pine was sprung into being. Excuse me. The Boonford to Johnson City section was the last remaining and only operating area of the ORNC Railroad that I just mentioned. That's one of the, if you're a railroad nut, that's one of the interesting little things to find out about it. Now, the section of the railroad was sold to George Lafayette Carter in June 1902, and that's when he combined it into the South and Western Railroad, which is what, of course, turns into the Clinchfield. Okay? The name was chosen, the South and Western. Does anybody know why Carter named it that? This is kind of interesting, I thought it was. He didn't want people to know he was trying to monopolize getting a route down the mountain, okay, and to Charleston. That was the whole goal, because whoever did that was going to make a lot of money, because they were going to move coal, they were going to move timber, they were going to move all sorts of stuff over this railway. So he named it the South and Western in order to confuse the opposition of its exact where it was going to end up, because it was heading east, not south or not west. Okay? He renamed it the Carolina, Clinchfield, and Ohio in 1908. In 1908 also, the southbound passenger train would stop at Benton Station at 11:02 a.m. The northbound train would stop at 4:16 p.m. And we had a copy of a schedule I sent today with the Boonford line noted on it for the CC note. Okay, now a couple other interesting things about Boonford here as we move on. By the way, this is the Boonford Schoolhouse. Chris sent me that picture to put in here, and that was where it stood. There was at one time an electric railroad that was planned to join the CCNO at Benton. And that electric railroad was going to run from Yancey County, and Burnsville was going to go to Asheville. The whole thing, they were trying to break the monopoly of the Southern Railroad. So the idea was they would join the CCNO, and Boonford was chosen as that location because it was sitting at a nice little island where they could get the two of them together, right down there. So anyways, they were looking into doing this in 1904. They formed something called the Esteto Electric Company that tried to build this road. It was going to be 50 miles long, and it was going to run Boonford from Michael to Asheville. Now, just two or three other things I'm just going to throw out, just some cool little tidbits about Boonford. Sam Robertson on January 2nd, 1909, shot and killed Rabbit John Willis in a freight car at Boonford along the tracks. He claimed self-defense, turned himself into authorities in Bakersfield on January 21st. Don't know if he got convicted or not. May 10th, 1912, Deputy Sheriff, Mitchell County, A.C. Hall, shot and killed 18-year-old D. Hunter for resisting arrest. D. Hunter and Lusky Carroll were in McDaniel Hunter's store. They were beating up a fellow by the name of W.B. Robinson. Hall attempted to arrest him. They forced him out of the store. He returned with a posse and shot. June 27, 1935, Buna T and Winfield Garland were shot to death in Garland's barn at Boonford, where they'd gone to milk cows. $6,000 was found in Garland's body. That's a lot of money in 1935. Buna T was pregnant at the time of the murder. Local gossip had an inheritance dispute as the motive for the murder. That story made national news. Now, just a few other things for our physicians here. Dr. John Stinchcomb practiced medicine in Boonford in 1908. Dr. J.B. Ewing also lived and worked in Boonford, was frequently experimenting with different agricultural crops that received statewide attention in the newspapers in the early 1900s. He had a large apple orchard and marketed apples all across North Carolina. R.L. Burkhead had an interest in a potash conversion plant that was at Boonford. And Doug, that's what you were seeing down there, you know, those ruins that you said. That was a potash plant that was down there.
Big building.
A great, great big building. And they did that. So Alexander was something you may not know. Yep, sure did. That was in 1919. In November 1919, this name sounds familiar. R.S. McCall's store in Spruce Pine was robbed of $800 of jewelry. The suspects were believed to have boarded the train in Boonford. Okay, they never caught them. They got away with the jewelry from down here on Lower Street. And there was, of course, a McCall store in Spruce Pine until the 1990s. And finally, on February 5th, 1935, Tillman Howard Young died at his home in Boonford. It is claimed he was the last surviving member of the Black Mountain Boys, Company C, 16th North Carolina, Confederate States of America. And he was that was the first Confederate unit that was raised in Yancey County during the Civil War, and he lived in Boonford. So, there's just a few little things about Boonford you may not know. And that kind of got us started on some of this other stuff. Boonford, again, was a boom town until the railroad made it to Spruce Pine, and now nothing. Doug mentioned he found that one big area built in the woods. Other than that, it's all gone.
And Starley McDowell has a relative, I don't know this person, who claims that she, whatever this means, she has the keys to Boonford. There must be a gate somewhere.
Yeah.
And Starley promised me that they would take me up there and unlock the keys to Boonford. If we do that, we'll call you.
Now, there's another little community right next to Boonford called Lundy. Lunday, and this is, of course, the bridge that goes across the river, and it is still down there if you want to go see it. And there's a Lundy Road. You can get it. It's off of Highway 80. If you look, you'll see it. It's in a curve. It's a little gravel road, about a mile and a half down in there. And the railroad's right there, of course. But Lundy was another little community. And again, it sprung up along the river right down there. Now, this one is interesting to me because we're going to see how a community basically gets wiped off the map. This is Penland, North Carolina. Okay, we're going to start here in the early 1900s. This was downtown Penland. Can you believe this? There was a lumber company. There was a mica house. There was all sorts of development, a railroad depot, a post office. And you see it all built up like right along the tracks here. And that, by the way, Alex, you're talking about where you did your fish.
That's it.
You're getting ready to learn what that was. Okay? That you all ran into down there. Okay, so there was a nice development down here. Milton Penland started in Penland, North Carolina. Okay, and it was a thriving community. Here's the Harris Clay Kaolin mine down there in 1908. Again, you see the river, the railroad, the mine, all right there in one place. And they could get in and out. This, of course, C.J. Harris. You're going to hear more about him on Monday night if you come to Chris's talk about the Harris schools. And I love this picture. That's just the river at Penland. But what happened on July 16, 1916?
Big flood.
Where did it come from? There were two hurricanes that collided over the top of Alder Pass. They've done 22 inches of rain in 24 hours. That was the record. And I wondered about this. That may have just been North Carolina, but I think Houston wiped that record out very recently. In terms of the amount of rain in a 24-hour period, Alder Pass held that record for years. Okay? Anyhow, there was a flood in July that year. This is the start of that flood. And right there is a dam in the river. Okay, we're going to come back to the dams here a little bit later in Spruce Pine. But the point is, they had a dam that was making electricity for this community. And here you see the start of the flood. Whoops, what did I do? Put it to sleep. No, there we go. There's the powerhouse, the dam. And again, it's the start of the flood. And then this is what happens later. Okay? This is the Carolina Mercantile Company in Penland after that flood. Remember all those buildings we looked at earlier? Totally wiped out. Every bit of it. This community that was thriving in 1916, there's the remnants of your powerhouse wiped off the map by that flood. So what happened? They brought the post office back. That was about it. So the Penland that existed up until then basically was a store and a post office after that. That was it. Totally brings you around the Tow River's power in this region. It can really tear things up. I started to throw in a picture here too in 2004 of the flooding in downtown Spruce Pine, and I took my kids. Now, they were tiny at the time, but I said, you need to see this. Your dad has never seen anything like this. The river was up to Lower Street in 2004. It did not crest over into Lower Street, but it was right there at it. So the tow is a very powerful thing. So now that brings me to talking about Spruce Pine here, as we get toward the end of things. Of course, this is Spruce Pine in the early 19-teens. Let's see if you can figure out, there's a couple of buildings that are still standing down there in this picture. Okay, this one here is Bob's Antiques. And this one here was the first brick building built in Spruce Pine. It's got several different businesses in it now. Mark Conley has his barbershop in it. There's a florist in it. That is the first brick building built in Spruce Pine. Dr. Charles Peterson built that building. So anyways, here you can see Spruce Pine, but in a growing community, it has a railroad, we have mining, we have all sorts of economic activity, and what's the one thing they're looking for at that time? Electricity. And a fellow by the name of Charles Joseph Harris, C.J. Harris, comes to town, and he's got mining interests, and he needs electricity to run stuff at his mines. So he puts a dam in the Tow River down basically where the bridge is that you go to Minpro now, on the Minpro connector, roughly in that area, okay? This is the powerhouse for that dam, and this is a fellow right here, his name is Ryan. What's his first name? Of course, I forget that. But anyhow, this is him out on the river, out near the power plant, checking out the dam. And of course, he would take the kids back and forth across in front of the dam. This picture here kind of drives it home. There he is in front of the old Spruce Pine Dam. That thing provided electricity for Spruce Pine for about 20 years. What they would do was that they would use the electricity at the plants, and then Harris would flip it over, and for a period of time, if you have things wired in your house, you got electricity from it. A lot of folks don't really realize what all he did for this community. This is one of the examples. He spent $500,000 in today's money building the schoolhouses you see over here at Pine Bridge. You're going to hear, like I said, a lot more about him on Monday night. But the point is, he put this dam in the river, one, to get power for his plants, but two, to give electricity to Spruce Pine and keep its economic engine going.
What years were those when they did the electricity?
That would have been 1910s, early 1920s. About the Depression time, they started, getting the rural electrification up in here, and it declined at that time. They didn't use it anymore. But for about 20 years, that was the town's power supply, which is kind of interesting. And Alex mentioned they took it out of the river not too long ago, because it was a hazard.
Well, a lawyer got killed there.
Yeah, he sure did. John Peterson is his name. He drowned it. But yeah, that dam was actually put there to generate electricity for this town. And the Tow River kept that going. I just wanted to kind of close with a couple of things. I love this picture of him just kind of rafting down the river here. This is made somewhere around Penland. Again, in the early 1900s. But what was interesting to me is the dress, if you look at it up close, not a lot different from today. We've been kind of surprised, we've seen a lot of pictures, what I call the old style. It's amazing how many of the younger folks at that time dressed more like we do today. But here they are right down the river. Now, a couple of things I wanted to mention right quick. Of course, that's this on Monday night, 7 o'clock over at Harris Middle School. Chris is going to talk about the origins of the Harris schools in Spruce Pine, which they are 100 years old this year. That's when C.J. Harris donated the money. He gave $30,000 to build the first school. And Chris is going to talk about that. And it's also going to tell you a little bit about just early education in the region, which I think you'll find kind of interesting. That's at 7 o'clock Monday night, totally free if you want to come. The other thing I wanted to mention right quick is on October 21st, the Apple Butter Festival in Bakersville. We just kind of get together and celebrate fall. And it starts at 10 o'clock at the Creek Walk, and we'd love for you to come over. We sell apple butter to benefit the Historical Society. It's free admission, but there's going to be all sorts of cool stuff going on that day. So that gets me to all I was going to do. I entertain questions if you've got anything you'd like to ask about the tow or anything else I talked about here. Yes.
Question. Where did the Tow River branch into this North Tow? And then where did the South Toe branch from that?
Okay, the South Toe and the North Toe, well, the North Toe obviously is what we're on. South Toe comes up from roughly Mount Mitchell, and they join together down not too far from Benton, actually.
Oh.
Down in that area. Toe Cane, right down through there is where they come together. And they call it then the Tow River until, as Alex mentioned, when the Cane joins it. And then that becomes the old Chucky. And he goes up into Tennessee. Yes?
We did that walk over the mountain bend from Uniman Schoolhouse Mine up to where Davenport Springs was. And that was fascinating up there. They told the story about the Bright family.
Samuel Bright, yes.
And were there more farm families around him there, or was he isolated there?
No, William Davenport lived there. He was a local, I'll call him legend. He was a surveyor, and the reason I find him kind of interesting, he surveyed out the land that my ancestor got in 1802.
So this was late 1700s?
Yeah, Bright actually moved there around 1760. Davenport would have been there 1760, 70, somewhere in there, and then they said the Over Mountain Men came through in the 1780s.
So was that one of the very first early settlements in the area?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, where Samuel Bright is at, that would have been one of the early settlements.
Were the Wisemans up in there too?
Yes, there were Wisemans up in there. Now there's a couple that also moved over in the Yancey County area around that same time, but they were, homesteaders, I guess is what you call them, because they were nobody else.
Tell about the story, if I'm right, David, about the guy that got buried in an unusual coffin up in there.
Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about. That's the Childs. Okay. So, as I mentioned, where you were walking, Davenport Springs, all that, that was going to be Mitchell County's county seat. In 1861, when the county was created, the legislature said that would be the location because there was a family there. Their last name was Childs.
And this is in the middle of the Civil War?
Yeah, this would have been right at the start of the Civil War. And let me debunk one quick myth. Everybody thinks Mitchell County was created because there were Union sympathizers on this side of the toe, and Yancey County was full of Confederate sympathizers, and they didn't want anything to do with each other. Well, it's obvious they were working on getting Mitchell County created 10 years before it happened, and it was created in February of 1861, and when was the first shot fired in the Civil War? April. Okay, so they don't really have anything to do with each other, although it looks that way. But yes, so this is going on at that time. So anyways, they declared that there had to be a county seat, obviously. And this family, their last name was Childs, they had a settlement, which is basically where the Everett County Airport is today. It's called, they call it Childsville at that time, was the name of it. And they donated land to be laid out in lots to create a county seat at that location. And it was going to be named Calhoun. Anybody know why? Who is John C. Calhoun? Let's do a little
Is
quick
he
history
the one
lesson.
of the Carolina Theater or Calhoun?
No, it's not OD. OD may be related to him, but John C. Calhoun was vice president for two presidents. Okay? And he also had a son-in-law that later founded Clemson University. Okay, down there. In fact, the homestead where they were at was part of Clemson. But he was a states' rights advocate. He was a South Carolina senator, and they were going to name the community in his honor. Okay? And so there was a plan to create Calhoun. And in fact, we have an advertisement in the actual paper where they were going to sell lots. They had laid off and you could buy a lot in Calhoun. Well, they kind of got things started, but there was a group in the other end of the county that wanted what was then Bakersville to become the county seat. And they agitated, said that they didn't want to have it at Calhoun, and the Justice of the Peace that had to collect taxes to build the county seat wouldn't collect the taxes. He said he didn't want to do that because that's not where he wanted it at. So they built a log courthouse. They had court there for a year or two. And then they had some issues, and then the legislature came back as they agitated to put it in Bakersville again. And they wanted to then put it in a place called Normanville. Does anybody know where that is? Normanville? And you drive through it every time you go to Bakersville? Ledger, North Carolina. Okay? That's Normanville. And if you think about it, that makes sense. That's the middle of the county. Okay? But again, there was enough politicizing in the other end of the county. They even went as far as to change the name to Davis for Jefferson Davis, because they figured that would play well with the legislature. And it was not settled until 1868. And that's when they finally declared Bakersville as the county seat. But Calhoun, right after it lost that first couple of years, it ceased to exist by the 1870s, so there was nothing left.
What about this coffin?
Okay, now that brings me back. That's a good coffin story. So the Childs family had one patriarch who came to this area. He was a physician. And when he moved here, he died. And they buried him in a crypt that is still on the grounds up there. We have been there, we have seen it, we have taken pictures of it, and the folks at Uniman have cleaned it up now where it's at, where he was buried, and they put him in there.
And isn't there a legend that that crypt was filled full of whiskey?
That's what I'm coming to. So they put the old boy in a lead coffin, and they filled it full of whiskey to preserve it. And they put him into the crypt. Okay, and he stayed in there until after the war. And they decided, the Childs family, because the devastation. And I'll be honest with you, the Palmers and the Childs weren't too welcome here after the Civil War because of some things that went on during the Civil War with the Home Guard and them shooting some people over in Bakersville. But yeah, they basically left. And when they left, they decided they'd take Pop with them. So they hauled him out and they opened him up and they said except for a little mole on his nose, he was perfectly preserved. And they loaded him onto a wagon and they hauled him to Lincolnton and they buried him down there. And Lysander Childs, who was his son, had textile interests and he ran textile mills in Lincolnton for many years. And then I guess something happened there. But anyhow, he made the decision to move to Lexington, South Carolina, just outside of Columbia. And what do? They dig Pop up, haul him to Lexington. And he's in the ground today in Lexington, South Carolina. But his original burial spot is right up there at Childsville right now.
The over the mountain guy that was our guide on that walk told us another interesting story about that Springs, that the Bright family there had obviously several sons, I don't know, 4 or 5 sons or whatever, and there was another family coming through on the Yellow Mountain Road or wherever, and they had 5 daughters or whatever, and they got there in late fall and they couldn't go any further because the winter had fallen on, and they obviously had to spend the winter there, and come spring they had 5 weddings.
Yep.
Is that true?
Yep, that is true. Sure is. And Mr. Bright also had a wife who got accused of stealing some cloth and had to be whipped for
From a
it.
peddler.
Yes, from a peddler. He sure did. And wasn't long after that Bright and she left the region and they moved up in Kentucky. So, but Samuel Bright was the original settler. And if you go up there today, there is a road called Bright's Trace, and there are 2 houses up there that claim they have wood from his cabin in them. The original cabin. So,
David.
yes.
One of the things that I realized just in all the storytelling with David, it impressed me because maybe the isolation back over the years, how extremely enterprising people were. We like to look back to the dam, but you were telling me about how many movie theaters.
Yeah.
The place was crawling with movie theaters.
Yeah, no, we Daniel's told a story of being in the newspaper in a couple of weeks on that. There were in Spruce Pine, there were 3 movie theaters. There was the Carolina, and up where today, let's see what would be there. You know, where Twisted Laurel was, Gallery Stellinger's now, that was a movie theater. And then this burned out building that was up here across from the motel, that was a movie theater at one time. There were 3 of them. Bakersville had a movie theater. Tokane had a movie theater. There were several crossover. There was one up on Crabtree. There used to be a mining camp up there. I don't know if you know much about that, Alex. But where is I'll call it the real Crabtree Falls is at. You know where I'm talking about? It's on private land. So they were mining up in there, and they had a community they built. It had a movie theater and all sorts of stuff.
Really?
It sure did. That would have been in the 1930s. Yes, no, sure did. So yeah, I mean, you know, I used to laugh when I was a kid. People would tell me about Spruce Pine, about how mean it was, and I would just laugh because it was not, you know, not the town. I remember in the 40s, this place was rocking. I mean, they had the barn dance at the theater, and you had all these musicians that would come to town. They said Doc Watson used to come just sit down here on the corner and play music. You know.
And that's when Chili Bob was chief of police, and
Yes.
that was Deb's grandfather.
You know, there were restaurants that were open till midnight. There were 2 pool halls in town. I mean, it was a rocking and rolling place. There were 4 taxi services. Yeah, we actually have pictures of the taxi services. There were 4 different companies that ran taxi services in Spruce Pine.
So that's where the taxi stand, little shop up, little swing.
That was one of them. We kept it down here in town, yes. Sure did.
Well, are we looking at the demise of Spruce Pine with the railroad basically pulling out?
Well, that's interesting. So in terms of the railroad, and I didn't get into this, and I probably should have a little bit here. The tow now is becoming a tourism magnet because people were coming to whitewater raft, and as Alex mentioned, they have worked tremendously on cleaning up the river. Okay, and you asked, and I can remember when it was milky white all through Spruce Pine. We're talking days, folks. We're not talking, just every once in a while. It would just be white. Every time you were in town, it was just that way. But there's been a tremendous amount of work trying to get the tow back into a pristine state for fishing, kayaking, and things of that nature. The railroad itself, in terms of effect, that's been more of a what's the word I'm looking for? It's not been an economic impact here because we had a couple of employees that were through here, but not like in Irwin, for example, where they had to head in. It's interesting to me because, there was a push there for a little bit that they were going to try to get this particular piece of the line and privatize it and turn it into some sort of a tourism
Passenger
thing.
train, now that would be excellent.
CSX, though, has now backed off, and they've started running more and more trains up and down that mountain. I don't know if you've noticed here lately. There's been a lot more traffic. We can hear it at my house. It's one of the reasons I know that. And 3 or 4 nights a week now, you hear a train going up and down the mountain. And, there for a bit, it had just ceased. But they have started running more and more. And I don't know, if that's just a ploy to keep things.
New management at the top, and they screwed the whole thing up, and they had to use it. Didn't really want to, but they had to.
But none of the coal unit trains come through anymore. It's just general freight.
Yeah. It's just general freight, the one from down here, the mining, I think they send, 2 cars a week? Seems like
that.
Yeah, that they load on, side load on the grades. I noticed there for a while they were storing a lot of stock, rolling stock on the rails at different spots. They had outpasses. They had a whole bunch of hopper cars that just sit down there for a long time. Even that stopped. But I've been kind of intrigued with the increase in the traffic. Just things about the railroad. We probably ought to do a rail thing someday. Ringo Brothers Farm and Bailey Circus used to roll through town here. Occasionally they would stop in between us, and would do stuff. So you'd have the circus train come through town. You'd have, even back in the 80s, 90s, probably not too long ago, there is a plant in Irwin that makes uranium fuel for the nuclear subs, and that used to roll through Spruce Pine at 3 o'clock in the morning on the train, and they didn't tell anybody that. If you were up, you could see, you come in these big vats and they'd have the radioactive seal on it and the whole kit and caboodle.
And the big train wreck at Outpass.
Yeah.
What was that, the wreck of the 97?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, there was a couple of times, and they bet head on down the outpass.
Is that where that song came from? The wreck of the old man?
Probably one of the bluegrass songs. Yeah, that might have been written by one of the locals. Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, rail-wise is just amazing. As I was mentioning in the talk there, and I didn't really get into it much. The loops alone are phenomenal. They had several engineers they brought in that said that there was no way that rail could go down the mountain. There was a guy that had graduated from, I believe it was Virginia Tech. He came fresh out of school, and he says, I can do it. And he did. He actually ran it down the mountain, and he did it at a 1% grade, and they had never modified that since it was built. Never.
How many tons?
16. And they were cut at the time larger than they had to be, and they have never been modified for the modern trains.
But the old steam locomotives couldn't pull more than 1.5% grade.
Right.
And so they had to keep the engineering below that.
No,
Is that not true?
they went they had 4% grades in the west.
Yeah. The main reason they were worried here was just getting it down the mountain, So he elected to create a loop back system. There's one area that goes, 16 miles? Something like that. And then it descends and comes back on itself out there.
Well, that 1% kept popping up on a lot of the old history I read. That's not true then?
No, the railroads built what they had to. Rio Grande, when they built out of Denver built a solid 2% for the first 60 miles.
We're talking about the same time frame now?
Just a little earlier.
Yeah.
In the 1890s, they built 2% for 60 miles, and then they built a section, it was the Denver Salt Lake, of 4% to get over the mountain and then put the Moffett Tunnel through.
This one out here, they worked on a 1% grade, and I forget, it's an ungodly amount of money for that
And
time.
how many died building that?
Oh gosh, a bunch.
Hundreds.
Yeah, and one of the things we've been doing recently at the Historical Society, there is a website, I don't know if you're interested, it's called newspapers.com, that you can buy a subscription to, and you can dig through old newspapers. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't have like the Tri-County News is not on it, but the Asheville Citizen's on it, Charlotte Observer's on it, all these. So we started digging just to find stuff, and we found where the Italian embassy got involved with that ruckus out here where 2 Italians were killed. Because they basically said they weren't going to get paid, and they held up and said, we're going to get paid or whatever, and then they ended up killing them. And there was this big ruckus with the Italian embassy, and they ended up settling, paying money for those guys. And we found the whole details, all that in the newspaper, which was just wonderful, because we never had all that.
So most of the manpower to do all those loops was European immigrants?
European immigrants were brought in here, yes. Sure were. Now, if you're here in Spruce Pine, you see there's a place called Tappan Street. That was Jack Tappan. He was fire chief and a bunch here. But his dad was one of the engineers that helped work on the rails. And there's all sorts of legends about him and building the railroad out there and having fights and people dying. And I mean, it's just, that whole thing to me is just amazing that they pulled it off. And more importantly, that they've not had anything to do with it. It's just amazing to me that it's still 110 years later and they're still using it. No questions. But, that's the bad thing about the toe. It's not deep enough and it's too rocky to conduct commerce. But like I mentioned, the thing it did do was it gave us that cross cut, across the mountain path that they could follow and that they used basically from time immemorial, to do a lot of the travel. Especially to think that DeSoto came through here is just amazing to me. For him to walk down through Lower Street and Spruce Pine is just amazing. He would have followed the river, the whole thing.
That's the step here.
All right, well, I'll be around for a little bit.